Happy Halloween, guys. The Strong Boys 19 here. And to be honest, I don't like the occasion of Halloween that much. I always thought it was just boring. And I prefer, Michael Myers and the original Halloween movie over just, the occasion. I know that's random to say. But I am very looking forward to share this new update for you guys in this video. And I've got a new swivel chair. I've been coming back to my phase of listening to metal music once again, and I am just excited to share the metal albums I've got for you guys. A lot of CDs for this update, although I do have some solo artist albums that I am going to share first. I've been coming back to Bob Dylan not too long ago, and these are in no particular order with these piles of CDs. This one is New Morning, and this one took me some time to absorb and gel, but I really got to enjoy this album a lot the more I listened to it. As a follow-up to Self-Portrait, this is like the better album, better production and lyricism. Well, his next album in terms of just originals in general, so New Morning's very good. Speaking of Self-Portrait, here is that album, and I had explained my thoughts about this album, that this is, in my opinion, one of his most underappreciated albums, that it did not deserve the hate that it got. It's not one of my big favourite Dylan albums, but I had played this album quite a lot. There were some fillers I'm not a fan of, but there is a lot of excellent covers and renditions of tracks. So yeah, I think Self-Portrait's very enjoyable. 1975, the Bootleg Series, Volume 5, the Rolling Thunder Review. And I had seen that there was a new release box set of these kinds of tours not too long ago, which I may get, but I'm just going to stick with this one for now. Before the Flood with the Band, which is probably my favourite Dylan live album, besides 1966 with the Royal Albert Hall concert. And there were some tracks on this live album that I had not heard of before from the band themselves. This live album is excellent. Some amazing musicianship and production. Tremendous live album. Hard Rain, very underrated. Some people dismiss this, but there are some brilliant renditions of tracks like One Too Many Mornings to Shelter from the Storm, and of course Dylan's most aggressive, pissed off version of Idiot Wind. This is a very good live album, although it is not as properly well produced, because it was a raw recording of them doing these shows live, but this is very good. Modern Times, I haven't played this one yet, but I am interested enough to dive into this material. So that's that one. It reminds me of Love and Theft, which is one of my favourite Dylan albums, so that's why I was interested enough to buy that album. Infidels, again, haven't played this one all the way through, but back in the day, I remember really liking some of the tracks like Sweetheart Like You, Joker Man, and Don't Fall Apart on Me Tonight. And the next one is the religious-fueled album Slow Train Coming. And there are some brilliant tracks, a few that I'm on the fence with. It's not like one of his very best, and the female vocals with Dylan were lovely on this album. But this album does have very good material. And speaking of Self-Portrait, once again, here is the Bootleg Series Volume 10 of another Self-Portrait. 2 discs. It's a very interesting way to listen to these kinds of sessions from Dylan at this time, because these were recorded between the sessions of Self-Portrait and New Morning, a few from Nashville Skyline. This is very, very good. Now into the other solo artist that I've been coming back to, which is Lou Reed. And I was heavily interested to come back to him since that I am a fan of the Velvet Underground. Coney Island Baby, as a follow-up to Metal Machine Music. This is one of his best albums. This is the 2006 remaster. The remaster of this album is wonderful, an excellent remaster. I have got it on vinyl as well. Coney Island Baby is, one of my favourite Lou Reed albums. Ecstasy. This is another one of my personal favourites. Excellent album by itself. Some of my new favourites like Paranoia Key of E, Mad, Ecstasy, Like a Possum, Big Sky, Baton Rouge, and this cover, it's just Lou Reed masturbating. So, yeah, let's just leave it at that, alright? New York, I only played this one time, but I think there are some very good tracks, and a lot of the lyrics dealt with, just the overall themes and the life of the New York City, with some tracks on separate stories. Wonderful production on this as well. Lou Reed and John Cale with songs for Drella, and you can probably see that, of Andy Warhol in the background, which is a very cool idea. This is a interesting collaborative album, and John Cale from the Velvet Underground, really good on this album. Interesting music. As a dedication to Andy Warhol, it's just like a good homage. And the last one from him, Berlin. His third studio album. This is one of the most disturbing and darkest, despairing albums I've ever heard. And people gave this album hate because of it when it came out. But this is one of his very best albums. It is unsettling. It's a tragic rock opera. A lot of the darkness is very presentable on this album. Now, onto the metal phase, guys. So, Slayer, Seasons in the Abyss. Not my favourite Slayer album. My two favourites are Raining Blood and South of Heaven, but this is just as amazing. Great production, one of the strongest produced Rick Rubin has ever done, and co-produced by Slayer and Andy Wallace. Andy Wallace, another one of my favourite producers in metal albums. Really strong, it's near perfection. Some Anthrax albums that are parts of the Island Masters. Spreading the Disease, Persistence of Time, and State of Euphoria. And I'm very looking forward to come back to Anthrax. I had only got, at the time, Among the Living, but now that I have bought some more Anthrax, I would like to come back to these guys. Decided to buy Trivium's Shogun. This was a missing part in the collection for a long time. Way too long, really. But I am very proud to come back to Trivium, as that they were one of the first metal bands in modern metal. Shogun, I'm so looking forward to come to this album. Soulfly, Primitive, the second studio album, and I do love some Max Cavalera, and Soulfly is, like, to me, one of those very underrated metal bands. Obviously, I would prefer Sepultura with the Cavalera brothers, but I do like Soulfly quite a lot. And speaking of Sepultura, I have come back to those guys, and I will be reviewing Chaos AD after this video for Classic Albums Revisited, and then I'll come back to Iron Maiden, for Somewhere in Time. So, I've bought 3 from the band. Morbid Visions. This is like an album that is, engulfed into the black metal phase, because they were a black metal band first. This is in part of the Sepultura remasters. I think that this debut is good, very enjoyable, but the later stuff is easily like so much better. This also contains the Bestial Devastation EP. You know, when it was released originally, it was a split because the first half of the split was a band of Overdose, and the second half was Sepultura. And I did like the EP, but it's not like one of the best ever EPs. But I did enjoy Morbid Visions and the EP together, all in one CD. Now, speaking of the Derek Green era, I am not a fan of the Derek Green period from Sepultura, but I have respected them. I wasn't a fan, but I decided to buy Down to 21. And this is, to me, their best album in this lineup. And this one has some of my favourites. I haven't played this one for a long time. Really great musicianship and some heavy production. And it's still sealed. I need to unwrap it. One of my favourites. I might give the other albums a go with Derek from the band after Max Cavalera's departure, but I am not a fan of Against, which is not a very good album for me. Same with Nation, not a fan of that album either, but this one is very good. And the last album is Schizophrenia, again in part of the Sepultura remasters, and I'm looking forward to play this. I love the early Cavalera period of Sepultura, and I have now all of the Cavalera era albums in the collection. So, love that cover art as well. I am so looking forward to come back to these guys, since that Sepultura are a band that gave me a lot of nostalgia. Same with Slipknot to Korn and Trivium, Black Sabbath, but Sepultura, especially with Chaos AD, those guys really brings it home for me as like one of the most fun times that I had whilst listening to metal music. So that's Schizophrenia. And the last album, speaking of solo artists once again, is the new Neil Young album. Neil Young and Crazy Horse, Colorado. The first album in terms of Neil Young with that band together in 7 years after Psychedelic Pill, which is a very, very good album. This one is really good too. Again, with just the shitty packaging that I really have never liked at all. This album's production is really, really good. Released to Reprise Records, and there are some tracks that have been growers. I love that picture at the back of the Milky Way. If you are a Neil Young fanatic like myself, check this one out and buy it. I think this is really one of his best albums in this decade. Psychedelic Pill being one of my favourites. I really liked the Monsanto years, even though that is a very controversial, divided album. Check this one out. That is it, guys, for my update. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.